Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a newer Tekota. This one's the Tekota 500 HG. You can see in form and fashion it's changed a little bit from its predecessors. This one has a nice, I guess you would call it gunmetal gray case to it. Level line seems to be working fine. Josh from California sent this one in. We're going to take this apart. We'll show you how to service it and keep this reel fishing for a long time to come. Well, before we start, I like to put on one of those protective gloves. I do try to keep greases and oils off of my non-working hand. So we'll start there. And while we do, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of fishing reel repair. If you'd like to learn how fishing reels are made, how they come apart, a little bit about the histories of the reels, and more importantly, how to service them yourself. And I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Okay, well, we're going to start by taking off the exterior pieces. And if you're not familiar with the reel, I recommend that you go out onto the internet and find the reel schematic if you don't have the one that may have come with the reel. And that's what I did here. I went out, the site is reelschematic.com, and this shows the Shimano Tekota. And mechanically, it looks very similar to the prior versions. And cosmetically, it looks like they've changed a few things, but mechanically, it looks pretty much the same. So I'm a little bit more familiar with it, but I do now have a reference point in the event that something comes up that was unexpected. All right, we're going to remove the handle. And I think this one still has what I call the rocket spring in it. There's a little spring that's a click spring that goes on the inner part of the star adjuster, and you need to be careful when you're working with that one. Okay, we have the handle comes off, and when I take my pieces and parts off, they go into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container for now. Who knows what I'll use next week, but we will see. Okay, this one probably is not the same because this is lifting up. Then we have a spring. So take pictures here, even if you have that assembly or schematic. Take the pictures. It gives you the orientation of the pieces and parts, how they came off, and more importantly, when it's time for you to put them back together again, it shows you how to do that as a reference point, so that if you're stuck, you can go and look at your pictures like now and see, oh, okay, the rim on this adjuster nut has a indent in it that's going to accept the spring. That's the orientation that you want to put that piece down in. Okay, let's grab this. I'm walking it off by hand, and you should notice on the back end of this you have a small flat washer but no indentation. So when you go to put it back in, the indentation faces up. Now we have a series of tension washers on here. There's one more small washer that's flat, and then there's two what I call bell washers or tension washers. Those washers show allow for the variability in the star adjuster. All right, we have 4 screws on this side. I always check the back. I like to make sure that if there is a screw back there, that it's identified before I open up the case. 4 screws, small Phillips head screw face. I guess you could use a flat blade in this too, because one of the lines comes through it. And I like to keep tension on the case when I take the case off, because I don't want the springs inside or anything to jump when that last screw is released. All right, these are coming out, but they're just sitting there. I'm just going to use pliers to pull them out. And it looks like Shimano uses a cold Loctite, a blue formula, on these to stop them from rattling out of the case. I generally do not use Loctite, and I don't recommend using Loctite, particularly the only one that can be removed by heat. If you Loctite something in, well, you may never be able to get that reel apart for the next service. And I've seen fishing boat captains do that because they don't care, I guess. But the screws lock in, maybe on a jig master or something, and you're stuck. You are literally stuck. All right, here's the last one. And get your camera ready to take a picture again, because when you go to open this up, you want to see the orientation of the pieces and parts so that when you go to reinstall, you got it right. All right, I took all of those screws out because I wanted to make sure they are the same size. They are. And now I'll put them in the corner of my parts tray. With those 4 off, let's see if the case comes off or we have to do some further work. Well, the case is going to come right off now. Okay, on the back you can see some dried grease. Otherwise, the reel looks pretty good. And this is where you take a picture now. You have your yoke and your main assembly. So the inside mechanics of this reel has not changed very much with the more recent iteration of the reel. The first thing I like to do is take the springs off of that yoke assembly, because as you go to turn things and the like, they have a tendency to shoot out. If they shoot out, well, then you'll be spending some time looking for them. So this reel has an anti-reverse clutch, and it has a backup anti-reverse dog. So when you go to remove this assembly now, you're going to want to pay attention to that back dog, which is sitting on a post right now. And you want to make sure you bring that out as you bring out your main gear. Take a picture here. This is your click ratchet. And you want to make sure that you see the orientation of the indentations or the teeth. So this one is coming in a counterclockwise manner at you if it was a buzzsaw, for example. There's nothing on the bottom. That's a squared bottom. I'm going to get a paper towel because this washer has some grease on it, so you want to get that grease off of there. And wipe it clean on the face. And then wipe the grease off of that anti-reverse dog. And when I do this with the ratchet itself, I like to just put that back on as a safe holding place when I put it into my parts tray. If it comes off, I already have noted the orientation on it, so we're okay there. This is your inner workings of your gear then. You have a short one up top. There's a bell on this top washer. You want to note that. It's a raised surface as opposed to an indented surface. The raised surface faces up. This is your collar for your anti-reverse gear. It's got 2 studs that go on the bottom of it. And that's going to fit inside that AR clutch. Small washer next. That would go into that. And again, it's on the schematic, but if you don't have that schematic, you're doing this for the first time, just take notes. Take a breath, take a note, see how it goes, and just make those mental notes and sometimes make the physical notes. These are hard washers. This is a carbon tex. It doesn't require any lubrication. Just make sure it's clean. If there is grease on there, you're seeing me wipe it off. The grease really doesn't help carbon tex. It's non-porous. But if you want to put a little bit on it, that's fine. We're going to check the main gear now. Just check all the teeth. This is a nice, relatively new reel. They're not scarred or anything. Put your washer back in. Next up, you want to note that the next piece in is a rather thick round washer. And we have the second. And then we have the eared washer, which faces down in the slot, just like this. So that's the stack. We'll go ahead and put this one on with that other cap washer in a moment. We're just going to put that off to the side. Next up, you want to put the fail-safe anti-reverse click ratchet on. You're going to do 2 things here. You're going to line this up with the post that it's seated on. You can give it a test. Spin it. It should be off. Turn it back. It should break it in. And we want to put our bottom washer on. Take our stack that's been greased. Put that on. I remove that top one just because I usually knock it out. Then we have the hard washer that goes on top, the smaller of the washers. And then we have the studded collar for the anti-reverse. I like to make sure that I put that on first because I want to make sure that I have a solid flush seating below here. We have 2 springs left here for the pinion gear. That's the one that rides on top of the yoke and presses the yoke back in after free spool release. Okay, we're now ready to put the side plate on. We've cleaned it. We've oiled that little bearing up there, oiled the trip lever. Make sure that the stud on the trip lever is up. You want to merge that with the 2 slots in the jack. Make sure that your collar is in that set there. And then just kind of align your holes. Bring it down. And make sure that you have a nice tight seam on the ridge here. Remember, the screws are all the same size, so it doesn't matter which side hole they go in. I like to use an X pattern or north, south, east, west quarter kind of a thing. Just alternating to keep the even pace and tension on that side plate. So we'll go kind of north, south. Again, I've got pressure on there with my finger at the moment. After the second screw, you can release that pressure. Come back to the other side here. And one more. That's the beauty of a parts tray. You can look into your parts tray and you know. If you see a part there that belonged installed before, you can stop. And better yet, when you're done with it, you can have an empty parts tray. All right, this is set up now for the install of the tension washers. Again, you can go back and check your orientation of these through your photos. We had the 2 that are curved, and we have the smaller one that fits, and then we have the flat washer that's underneath the nut that the star adjuster is going to use for the tensioner. Remember, 1 flat side, 1 ridge side. The one with that indentation or ridge is the one that's going to face up to accept the spring. I like to tighten that down by hand as much as I can. Some of the older reels, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have some grease or other things kind of stuck in there. But if you can do it with the hand, by all means try to do that. You will avoid risking a break. Okay, push it all the way down, and you can install the handle. The handle has a little washer on the back of it. Put that handle on. This takes a little bit of coordination. You're trying to hold the tension on that star adjuster so it doesn't pop back off while you do it. Again, tighten by hand as much as you can. Tighten down your star adjuster. And now you can use that wrench. Oops, wrong wrench. Tighten your cap washer. This has a point on it. Several points on it, but generally if the point can go to that opening for your little tie-down screw, your adjuster generally will make that. I missed. So next best thing, leave it on. Just take your wrench and just complete it a little bit more. Keep turning it until you have a visual sighting of the screw hole. Don't over tighten the nut. Back it off if anything, but we've got room here. Okay, and now we can put that last screw in, which is the cap screw. I'm going to put a little bit of grease onto my screwdriver here so that I can hold it and get it started. Alright, that's this side of the reel. Let's go over and take the other side off so that we can service the bearing in here. There's 3 screws holding this on. Do the same thing here that you did with the other one. Take those screws out. Make sure that they're all the same size. With the screws out, we can remove the side plate in order to oil the bearing. You have a back end of the spool here. It's got a plastic gear on it. I do not recommend greasing or anything with the plastic. Plastic is self-lubricating. You want to put a drop of oil on there. You've got 3 plastic drives in this one. You have a drive that's going to take the energy off of your spool, transfer it to a bigger drive, which is going to drive your worm gear. Okay, bearing is oiled. All right, put that back on. And you need to mesh those gears when you put it back on, so make sure you get a nice snap like that when you're doing that. One more piece to service, that's to service the pawl on the line guide. And this reel will be ready to fish on. So let's tighten this one up first. I didn't put those 3 screws in my parts tray. My parts tray is empty, which means that I've put all the pieces back on the reel. That's always a good thing. Whether I put them on in the right place is always a question, but they're all back in the right way. One more. Then service the pawl, give it a test. Pawls get dirty, they get bent, they wear out. They've been around forever. I just saw some listings recently for ceramic pawls. I haven't tried them yet. I'm kind of curious about how they work. I'm sure I know how they worked. No question about how they compare to the traditional metal pawl. To service the pawl, you want to remove the cover that's in the line guide carriage. And just tap out or remove the pawl. There's a little hole here in the pawl. We can use a pick to pull that out. Check the teeth of the pawl. You want to make sure that their points are equal, and just make sure you don't have any greases hung up on the shoulders here. That's generally what causes the pawl failure, is old greases on there. We can just take the assembly, put that right back in. And next up will be just to reinstall that cover. When you reinstall the cover again, if you can do yourself a favor and start it by hand, or be very cautious, because sometimes these don't go on square and you wind up snapping the cover. So just be careful as you do this. And don't tighten it down all the way. You want to make sure that those teeth get seated into a groove. So turn your reel and just keep tightening until it goes down without any resistance. Seems like we're starting to get it now. There we go. Now that we have it all tight, and then a little bit of oil onto the worm gear. And that's the mechanical servicing of the reel. Let's give it a test. We know it's working because we already saw that happening. We're in gear. Turn it. It's a nice, smooth operating reel. Go to your free spool. Make sure that that stud is engaged with that free spool jack. It is. Throw it down. Make sure your drags are tight. They are nice and tight. Back your drags off. You don't want to compress them if you're not using the reel. Well, that's it. You can test the clicker. And you're ready to go back fishing again. So Josh, thank you for sending the reel. This is your Shimano Tekota. It's the 500 HG, a more recent addition to the Tekota line. Perfect for inshore ocean fishing, and nice high-speed retrieve on it, 6.3 to 1. And as you saw, nicely made with good materials inside. So I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. I do appreciate all of your efforts and your work. To everyone, take the time to service your reels and then take them out fishing. That's what they're all about. If you service your reels and take them fishing, well, what could be better? I wish everybody great days on the water and great experiences fishing and a good time servicing your reels. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.